At 3 in the morning, I pushed the divorce papers across to Lucian with my own hands. Because I spent the night with someone else? He swirled his whiskey glass, the collar of his shirt still carrying a perfume that wasn't mine. Elaine, don't you understand the rules of our circle? Under the crystal chandelier, I slowly rubbed away the ring mark on my ring finger. I do, but I think you're filthy. Fine. He leaned in, the smell of smoke and liquor hitting me. Then go explain it to the two old men yourself, remember to cry convincingly. After all, the South City project just signed a $3 billion joint development deal. 3 years of marriage, 3 generations of family friendship, the whole financial pages were calculating the commercial value of our union. He bet I wouldn't sacrifice family interests. But he didn't know. I had the hotel room surveillance leaked on purpose. While he tossed and turned in the hotel, my legal team was at the notary sealing the evidence of his transfers of assets during the marriage. While he curled up with his new lover for a morning nap, the Lin family had completed the wholesale stripping of the Liu family's core technologies. From now on, I will set the rules as the commercial world rises and falls. If you bet I won't flip the table, then don't blame me for showing no mercy. I pushed the divorce agreement across to Lucian as he leisurely adjusted his cufflinks. Dusk pressed against the windows, and the chandelier in the conference room made the lipstick stain on his shirt collar look particularly glaring. Sign. Lucian's gaze skimmed the document's title, and he suddenly smiled. Elaine, how many times have you made a scene about divorce? He leaned back in his chair, his posture so relaxed it was as if he were enjoying an over-rehearsed play. The 3rd time? Or the 5th? The pen twirled between his fingers. Still not used to it? I lifted my eyes, my voice calm. Being used to it doesn't mean I don't mind you being dirty. The antique clock on the wall struck 6. My patience is limited. I tapped the tabletop. Sign. He finally set down the fountain pen, his fingers interlaced, that familiar, assured sneer rising in his eyes. Fine. If you want to leave, go find the 2 old masters yourself and talk. He listed them off like ordering dishes: Southport, West Tech Park, cross-border logistics chain. Hit any one of them and you wound the Lin family's foundation. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Elaine, cut it out. Who in this circle isn't like that? Turn a blind eye here and there, and you can live comfortably. How others live is none of my business. The glass reflected my expressionless face. I pushed the contract forward another inch. One last time, sign, or I'll sign for you. He stared at me for a few seconds, then suddenly laughed. Fine. He twisted off the pen cap, the nib hovering above the page. Elaine, don't regret it. Before he put pen to paper, he looked up and added, when the elders from both families come looking, remember to kneel and clean up the mess yourself. I looked at that garish rose red at his collar and felt a cold sneer in my chest. Regret? For someone who treated cheating like breathing and marriage like a shroud, even glancing at him once felt filthy. If it weren't for the tangled interests between the 2 families, maybe that marriage shouldn't have been entered into in the first place. I had just pressed the elevator button when my phone screen lit up. It was a multimedia message from an unknown number. In the photo, Nikki, the little star who checked into the hotel with Lucian last night, was curled up on the suite sofa, wearing an obviously ill-fitting men's shirt, the Italian brand Lucian often wears. The caption was 2 coquettish lines. Elaine, yeah, last night Lucian said I take better care of people than you do. He said you always put on that heiress act and you're exhausted. I stared at the screen and suddenly laughed. The elevator doors opened. I stepped in and saw in the mirror the curve at the corner of my mouth, cold as the glint off a blade. When I dialed the assistant, my voice was so calm you couldn't detect any emotion. Find out everything about last night's new friend in room 2307 at Peninsula Hotel. Miss Elaine, she's a new talent just launched by Xingyao Entertainment. She has a web drama and 2 skincare endorsements, and she's scheduled to film Starlight Lit the day after tomorrow. Cut everything off. The elevator descended, the numbers ticking by. I smoothed the tassels of my cashmere shawl against the mirrored wall and continued, notify all partners, from now on, any project involving her, the Lin family will never invest. For contracts already signed, I'll pay double the penalty. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Miss Elaine, she's backed by the Wongs. The Wongs? I laughed softly. Tell Mrs. Wong, while you're at it, that the $30 million her husband lost at the Melbourne casino last month was secured against marital property. If she wants to keep whatever little nest egg she has left, she should know how to choose. The elevator reached the underground garage. I walked toward the car, the night wind lifted the hem of my dress. But the fire still burned in my chest, insufficient, far from enough. Something that clings to men to climb higher, and still dares to dance in front of me, merely ruining her future would be far too easy. Before I opened the car door, I sent one more message. No salutation, no signature, just an address and a room number, Peninsula 2307, now. The other party replied instantly, understood. The car pulled out of the garage and merged into the midnight river of traffic. 5 minutes later, the phone vibrated. This time it was a 10-second clip, the hotel's back alley. The little star who an hour earlier had been taking selfies in a men's dress shirt was now curled up beside a dumpster. Her face was surprisingly clean, but the season's new dress was ripped from shoulder to waist, and her carefully permed hair was stained with some unknown grime. As the camera zoomed in, she suddenly raised her hand to shield her face, and there was a fresh red mark on her wrist, not deep, but enough to keep her from wearing short sleeves for half a month. The caption beneath the video read, Miss Elaine, don't worry, the doctors have checked her, only superficial injuries. But she probably won't have the energy to send MMS for the next 3 months. I stared at the screen and finally let out a breath. I dialed the internal line. By tomorrow morning I want to see headlines about Xingyao Entertainment stock hitting the limit down. Understood. Also, Mr. Lucian called a moment ago, asking about you. Block every number he has. I rolled down the window and let the night breeze rush in. And tell the hotel, have the shirt from room 2307 sent straight to incineration. What's the reason? I leaned back against the leather seat and closed my eyes. Dirty. After another nap I woke to twilight already pressing against the floor-to-ceiling windows. I felt for my phone on the bedside table, the screen flashed to life, and the first notification was a Weibo post Nikki had just made. My first time on a private jet, thanks to someone for showing me the sea of clouds at 4 in the morning. It turns out some views can only be seen from high enough. The accompanying photo showed clouds rolling by outside the porthole and a man's wrist draped over the leather armrest, a Patek Philippe star dial. Beneath the strap a familiar half-length scar peeked out. That was left 3 years ago when Lucian saved me. Someone in the comments asked, is that Mr. Lucian? She replied with a shy emoji. Almost at the same time, her phone vibrated. A message from Lucian popped up, saw the trending topics? The media made it up. Her agency needs exposure, so I gave them a little help. You were too loud last night, I need to soothe her side. Try to understand, okay? I stared at that line for a long time, suddenly struck by how absurd it was. So for some people, a favor means flying another woman to the stratosphere at 4 in the morning to watch the sea of clouds. So for some people, understanding means making me swallow a fly and smiling to say thank you. My finger hovered over the screen. I opened the chat window he'd used for 7 years. The background was the photo he'd secretly taken of me on our engagement day, me in a white dress in the garden, laughing, light at the corners of my eyes and brows. He'd never changed it in all these years. I pressed the delete key. Not block, permanent delete. 20 minutes later, going downstairs, my father was in the dining room watching the evening news. Hearing my footsteps, he looked up and his brow immediately creased. Why are your eyes swollen? Didn't sleep well. I sat down as the servant brought a warmed bowl of bird's nest. My father put down the remote, his voice growing heavy. Is that Liu family's brat at it again? No. I scooped up a spoonful of bird's nest, the steam blurred my vision. I just suddenly understood a few things. The TV was airing financial news, and it happened to be showing the signing ceremony for Lou Corporation's new project. The camera swept over the audience. Lucian, in suit and leather shoes, sat in the front row, and the seat beside him was empty, that had always been my seat. Now that seat was occupied by that little star, Nikki. My father's gaze followed mine, and his expression darkened suddenly. He was about to speak when I set down the porcelain spoon. Dad. I redid the project proposal for the new energy industrial park in the south of the city. Father froze. Lou Corporation's plan is too conservative, and their technical approach is flawed. I took a tablet from my bag and opened the file. I want to take this project on independently, with my own team. The screen was densely packed with data analysis, the result of every late night I'd spent over the past 3 months. My father took the tablet and swiped quickly across the screen. His expression shifted from surprise to gravity, finally settling into a kind of complicated gratification. But Elaine, he looked up, this project was supposed to be a joint effort between the two companies. If you do it alone, it means you'll be in direct competition with Lou Corporation. And... He paused. Haven't you and Lucian been arguing lately? Isn't this a bit? Business is business, marriage is marriage. I took over, my voice calm. He can take someone to watch the sea of clouds at 4 in the morning, and I can steal his most important project at 9 in the morning. That's fair, isn't it? My father stared at me for a long time. Long enough for the news on TV to switch to the weather forecast, long enough for the steam from the bird's nest soup to dissipate completely. Finally, he suddenly laughed, deep crow's feet bunching at the corners of his eyes. Fine. Tell me how much funding you need and have the CFO approve it. I'll assign you the best team. Just then my phone rang. It was a party invitation from my best friend Vivian, the location a top-floor bar on the Bund, the most expensive one. P.S. Celebrate your single life again tonight, drinks are on me. Remember to wear that red dress, the one that'll blind everyone. My father glanced at the screen and waved his hand. Go on. Let old Chin drive you there. Come back when you've had your fill of fun. 3. Half an hour later, when I pushed open the glass door to Skyline's top-floor bar, the room erupted into a deliberately subdued commotion. The crystal chandelier scattered light like crushed diamonds over the central booth. Lucian lounged lazily against the velvet sofa, and Nikki, the little star who had been thanking someone for taking her to see the sea of clouds on the morning's trending list, was now almost entirely sunk into his arms, holding up her phone to record a short video. Watching the sunrise at 4 in the morning, then hitting the bar at 9. Vivian sneered in my ear. Mr. Lucian really is full of energy. We had intended to avoid them, but Nikki had already seen us. Her eyes lit up with that provocative, performative sparkle. She murmured something into Lucian's ear, then rose with a sway, walking straight toward the display ice chest in the center of the lounge. At that moment a waiter passed by carrying a tray, and on it was the bottle of Romani Conti 1945, the very bottle that proved I had been here. Nikki's hand, polished with nude nail varnish, pressed against the bottle at the same time as mine. Elaine, sister. Her voice was saccharine sweet. Lucian promised to open this bottle for me to taste tonight. You wouldn't mind, would you? The table of society ladies behind her rustled with laughter. Someone, loud enough to be heard, whispered, "Some people just can't face reality, the man involved is right here and she still acts like the rightful wife." Nikki's right. What does order of arrival matter in love? The one who isn't loved is the redundant one. I loosened my grip and watched the triumphant smile rise on Nikki's face. Then, the moment she turned, I seized her wrist. "What are you doing?" she cried. I didn't answer. I just picked up the bottle and flicked my wrist. A deep crimson liquid poured over her head, soaking the expensive silk dress in an instant, false lashes glued to her cheeks, carefully styled curls matted into a mess. Dead silence. Then Nikki's shattered scream, "Elaine! Are you out of your mind?" Out of my mind? I set the empty bottle back on the trembling waiter's tray, took the hot towel and leisurely wiped my hands. I'm teaching you manners. First, I stepped forward, my voice clear. You can steal men, but don't steal from my liquor cabinet. Every bottle in here was chosen by me, and you have no right to touch them. Second, I looked at her discomposed state and smiled faintly. If you're going to be a parasite, at least have some parasitic discipline. Don't rush to the table to eat while the host is still alive. I raised my hand and pinched her damp chin. Easy to choke to death. Lucian rushed over at that moment. He yanked me away, shielding Nikki behind him, his face ashen. Elaine. Have you had enough of this? His chest heaved violently as he pulled the Bulgari necklace from his suit pocket. The velvet box was already half soaked with liquor. I was actually planning to use it to make you happy tonight. His voice contained suppressed anger, though he still tried to keep up the act of tender devotion. You had someone beat her up last night, cut off her resources, and I didn't make a fuss. Because I thought you still cared about me, that you were jealous, that. I laughed out loud. Really laughed out loud. Then I picked up the glass of ice water, who knew whose, on the table and splashed it in his face. Droplets ran down his stunned face, the necklace box clattered to the floor and rolled into a pile of crushed ice. Lucian. I took the clutch Vivian handed me and slapped the neatly folded papers onto his soaked shirt. Divorce agreement, final version. I signed. The lawyer will contact you tomorrow. I looked at Nikki trembling behind him and suddenly reached out, not to hit her, but to brush the wet hair stuck to her face. The gesture was as gentle as stroking a pet. Then she leaned close to her ear and, in a voice only the three of us could hear, said, "This man, I don't want him. He's yours. Enjoy him." I took a half step back and smiled slightly. After all, trash belongs in the trash can. Having said that, I hooked my arm through Vivian's, my high heels clicking crisply as we turned toward the door. Miss Elaine's temper is something fierce, came a chuckling click from the shadowed booth. The crystal chandelier's light skimmed Lucian's profile as he looked down and methodically wiped the sleeve I had just drenched. At my words he actually let out a low laugh. I'm used to it, so of course it's me who must take it. When he finished speaking, he suddenly turned. The protective posture he had used with Nikki moments ago was gone. He reached out, not to comfort, but with his knuckles he lifted her wet chin, forceful, not gentle, compelling her to tilt up that face smeared with red wine and tear marks. Do you hear me? His voice was pressed low, but it made the temperature in the whole bar drop. Nikki. His fingertip brushed her trembling lips, the movement almost gentle, but his words were laced with ice. Mrs. Liu's place. He pressed his finger slightly and the clasp made a faint click. From beginning to end, only she, Elaine, sits there. And you? He let go, letting the necklace fall, dropping into the wine stain on the floor. You're not worth even a speck of dust on her heel. He stood, took out a handkerchief, and leisurely wiped his fingertips as if he had just touched something unclean. At the last turn before the Riverside apartment, I had Vivian pull over. When I opened the car door, the early summer evening breeze brought the river's characteristic damp scent. I had walked this riverside promenade with Lucian countless times. The first time I walked beside him here was the day after we became engaged. At that time I had just officially joined the Lynn family business and was being bullied by several elder board members. I stormed out to the river and cried. He chased after me, asked nothing, and simply kept me company for a full 3 hours. When dawn began to break, he suddenly stopped and pointed at the construction site across the river. Elaine, do you see that scaffolding? His profile was sharp in the morning light. When that building is topped out, I'll build you a glass conservatory on the very top floor. Whenever you feel wronged, go up there and stay. What you'll see is only sky, clouds, and the whole city bowed beneath your feet. In the first year of our marriage, I independently took on my first project. After 3 consecutive nights of burning the midnight oil, I fainted from low blood sugar in the conference room. I woke up in the hospital. He was asleep at my bedside, clutching an unfinished report in his hand. The pages were densely annotated in red pen. The nurse said Mr. Lucian had kept watch all night, corrected all the errors I'd made in the data, and refused to let anyone wake me. I moved slightly and he stirred, his eyes rimmed with red. The first thing he said was, "Elaine, don't push yourself so hard next time. If the sky falls, I'll hold it up for you." Back then his shoulders really could carry my whole world. And that family trip to Iceland. I casually said I wanted to see the aurora, so he waited with me on the black sand beach for 4 cold nights straight. On the 5th dawn, when the green light finally swept across the sky, he suddenly dropped to one knee, in the 10 below wind and snow, and pulled out a rough grass-woven ring. "We rushed the wedding, this is me giving you a proper proposal." His nose was frozen red, but he smiled like an idiot. "Elaine, this life, the next life, and the one after, I've booked them all." The grass ring melted long ago, but his hot breath when he said those words still seems to linger in my ear. Vivian's voice pulled me back to the present. "I remember, on your first wedding anniversary he rented out the entire aquarium, just because you said as a child you wanted to sleep among the fish." She paused. "That day you stood in your wedding dress in the glass tunnel as a manta ray swam over your head, Lucian's look at you. I still remember it." "I remember." He looked at me then as if I were a unique treasure in the world. And I believed him. Until half a year ago, the name Lucian began to appear frequently in the corner of the entertainment pages. At first it was just vague gossip, mixed in with other wealthy family scandals, as unremarkable as an oil slick on the water. Until the 2 letters Nikki, like a festering sore, began to cling tightly to his name. She was Nikki, a newcomer heavily pushed by Starshine Entertainment. With the sudden additional investment from the Liu family, the web drama she starred in shot her to fame overnight, and she soon moved into the luxurious Riverside apartment just a street away from Liu Corporation's headquarters. That property fell under Lucian's name. The first time I truly faced that name was at an unavoidable business cocktail party. Lucian was laughing and chatting with others when she appeared like a vine at just the right moment, handing him a cup of warm water with practiced ease. The gazes of those around us subtly shifted between the 3 of us, but she only lowered her lashes and said softly, "Mr. Lucian, your stomach isn't good, drink less." At that moment, the look he gave her contained a relaxed gentleness I hadn't seen in him for a long time. Once, I foolishly believed that unlike Lucian and those other arranged matches among the wealthy who each pursued their own pleasures, our story was different. At least we were childhood friends who had seen each other at our most disheveled. I thought that between us, even if there wasn't a love as deep as the sea, there should at least be a tacit understanding of loyalty. Until that stifling afternoon when Vivian burst into my office and slammed her phone down on the desk. On the screen was the familiar carpeted corridor of the Peninsula Hotel. We had spent our 3rd wedding anniversary there. And in the surveillance footage Lucian was opening room 2307, the slight figure in his arm wearing the limited edition bucket hat Nikki often posts about. The timestamp was glaringly clear, 2:17 a.m. The last message he sent me that night had been, "Still at a reception, you go to sleep first." So there really are no walls that don't leak. When I went to the Liu estate with the printed photos, he was on a video conference. Seeing the images spread across the solid wood desk, his eyes flicked, and he waved his assistant out. When the door closed, he rubbed his brow, his tone carrying a weary sense of inevitability. "Elaine, I thought you already understood. Isn't this how our circle operates?" Outside the floor-to-ceiling window sprawled the bustling splendor of the whole river city. He stood in that sea of light, his face at once familiar and strange. "We each play our own part, don't interfere, and leave each other enough dignity." He stepped closer, reaching to touch my shoulder, but I turned away. "Rest assured, Mrs. Liu's place will always be yours. Those things outside, they're just passing acts." He spoke so calmly, as if betrayal weren't betrayal, but merely an unspoken rule of the adult world. As if the 20-odd years we weathered storms together, the empire we built side by side, the dreams and vulnerabilities we exchanged in the dead of night, all of it were weightless, undone by a single, "Everyone does this." But that barrier in my heart, I just couldn't get past it. I had made a scene about Lucian's glaring betrayals more than once. I smashed the pair of antique vases he gave me for our engagement, cut all his shirts into rags, and at the anniversary banquet publicly shoved the cake into his face. I said this marriage is over countless times, moved back to my mother's house, withdrew funding from our joint ventures. Yet whenever the night grows quiet and I see the photo on the bedside table of us at 16 beneath the snowy mountain, him carrying me with a broken leg, both of us grinning like fools, my chest feels as if it's being hammered repeatedly with a blunt instrument. I tried to convince myself, even saw a therapist, and practiced the wisdom from those marriage counseling classes: give him space, don't ask about his schedule, turn a blind eye to the scent of perfume he brings home. Vivian always says I'm foolish. Elaine, what are you after? What am I after? I'm after the scar he got fighting for me when he was 5, the hot wontons he climbed the wall to bring me when he was 15, the light in his eyes at 25 when he stood up in the boardroom and said, I trust Elaine. I'm afraid of pain. So every time we fight, I always find a way to step down. I will happen to pass by his company with dinner, by the way buy medicine when he has a cold, and smooth things over for him in front of his parents. I tell myself this is wisdom, it's maturity, it's the polish of a proper wife in this circle. Until the car crashed 3 months ago. Brakes failed on a rainy night. The moment the airbag exploded, the first number I dialed was his. Once, twice, 10 times. Busy tone. In the end the traffic police pried open the door and pulled me out of the mangled driver's seat. I received 17 stitches in the ER and broke my left leg. At 3 in the morning my phone finally rang. I answered with trembling hands and heard his lazy, alcohol-tinged voice, Elaine? What's going on so late? In the background there was a woman's coquettish laugh and Nikki's clear line, Mr. Lucian, it's your turn to sing. I said, I had an accident. He paused, his tone calm, is it serious? I'll have my assistant handle it. As if he were talking about a document that needed a signature. A nurse came in to change my dressing and asked softly, has your family come yet? I shook my head and smiled at her, it's fine, I can manage on my own. It turned out that when the heart dies completely, you don't even bother to complain. After hanging up, I lifted my head. The leaves of the plane tree rustled in the wind, sunlight dappled over me. Suddenly I realized, letting someone go isn't a moment of great epiphany. It's at a moment when you notice that in a world without him, the sun is still warm, the wind still gentle. On the first working day of the next month, the lawyer personally delivered 2 documents to my office. Miss Elaine, all legal procedures have been completed. Lawyer Joe's voice was steady. From today, you and Mr. Lucian are officially divorced. The same week's Friday, the annual business cocktail party hosted by Dingfeng Capital. As the current CEO of the Lin Group, I had to attend this banquet that gathered half of Jiangqing's capital circle, both officially and personally. I just hadn't expected Lucian to bring Nikki along, taking on the role of his newly anointed intimate confidant. The head table had a joint place card reading Lu Group, Lin Group. My gaze swept past it and I walked straight to the adjacent head table, calmly taking a seat in the spot marked Independent Investor. Nikki, dressed in a couture gown, was linking arms with Lucian and laughing with several producers. She clearly knew exactly how to maximize her visibility at an event like this. When I finished my rounds of socializing and came back, I found Lucian holding a glass of wine, sitting in the guest seat reserved at my table. Still angry about that night? He swirled the champagne, with an expression of knowing resignation. It's been a month, Elaine. I really did drink too much that night. You understand how our industry's socializing works. I took the water the waiter handed me and didn't touch the glass of alcohol he had pushed toward me. Lucian, we're divorced. My voice was calm, but unusually clear against the flowing background music. Not out of anger, it's a legal fact. You signed the papers, the Civil Affairs Office stamped them. He shook his head and laughed, as if looking at a sulking child, even leaning in closer and lowering his voice, fine, divorced. So tell me, how long do you plan to stay cold this time? You have to give me a timetable for when you'll let me make it up to you, right? I didn't answer, my gaze drifted to the hosts who were giving their speech. Crystal light turned and dresses fluttered, among the familiar elders who came to toast, Chairman Wang patted Lucian's shoulder and laughed heartily. "Lucian, when are you and Elaine inviting us to celebrate a baby? We've already got the red envelopes ready." Lucian lifted his glass with casual ease, his hand naturally hovering at the small of my back like an irreproachable husband. "Uncle Wang, rest assured, I'll make it quick." Mrs. Wang at the same table picked up the thread, teasing with a smile. "Miss Nikki's show has been a real hit lately. Lucian has an eye for talent, he knows how to pick them." Her gaze shifted to me, with the familiar intimacy of an elder. "Elaine, you'd better keep a close watch, such a capable gentleman, who knows how many young girls are eyeing him out there." Lucian listened to the flattery, a pleased curve touching his mouth. His hand unconsciously came to rest on Nikki's shoulder, but his eyes fell on my face with a subtle, expectant look, waiting to see how I would react. He seemed to relish being needed by two women at once, one representing respectability, the other compliance. I set down my crystal glass, the base tapped the table with a clear chime. "Auntie Wang is right," I said, looking at Mrs. Wang, my smile flawless. "Lucian is indeed capable. Not only does he run his business well, he knows how to promote people. I heard Stellar Entertainment is preparing to go public, and Luke Capital is the biggest investor?" I paused, then slowly turned my gaze to Nikki, my tone as casual as small talk. "The film Flicker with Miss Nikki as the lead is a flagship project, right? Congratulations in advance." "But..." I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice so only our table could hear, each word clear. "The entertainment industry renews itself quickly, patrons can fall. Miss Nikki, instead of figuring out how to be a vase admired by men, you should think, when this vase is no longer fresh, what will you have left?" The smile on Nikki's face froze instantly. Lucian released her hand and let it fall, his expression briefly darkening. I stopped looking at them and turned to Uncle Lee, who had just mentioned the baby celebration banquet, raising my glass with a radiant smile. "Uncle Lee, the investment proposal for the healthcare sector you wanted, I'll have my assistant deliver it to your office tomorrow. As for the other drinks..." Out of the corner of my eye I caught Lucian's sudden ugly look and gave a light laugh. "I suppose I won't have the chance to treat you for now. After all, every ounce of my energy must go into building up my own turf. Don't you think?" At the end of the party, Lucian intercepted me in the corridor. He leaned against the wall, the diamond cufflinks on his sleeves flashed coldly in the dim light, his posture the practiced, magnanimous composure of someone used to being on top. "Had your fun?" His tone carried indulgence as if he controlled everything. Nikki sighed. "You've vented, you've taught her a lesson. Move back next week, and we'll call this closed." I didn't turn around, my fingertips skimmed the cold glass facade, and his confident smile in the reflection was blinding. "Closed?" I smirked. "Mr. Lucian, we're divorced. Do you want me to slap the notarial certificate in your face to help you remember how the word spouse was deleted from your life?" He stepped closer, the smell of wood and a sickly sweet feminine perfume pressing in, Nikki's scent. "Elaine, don't act up." He lowered his voice, a warning in it. "I'm going to Singapore next month. I won't have time to play your make-me-chase-you games." I turned around, my high heels clicked a clear rhythm against the floor. What a coincidence. I smiled. "I'm signing a 100 billion contract for the Qingnan Industrial Park next month, and I'll be living at the command center for the next 6 months. If Mr. Lucian wants to discuss a partnership," I lifted my hand to check my diamond watch, "please make an appointment with my secretary first." At that moment Nikki appeared carrying refreshments, like a drama queen who had timed her entrance perfectly. "Lucian." Her voice was slick, but her gaze flicked toward me. "My lease on the apartment is up. Could I stay temporarily in the Yunding place?" She paused on purpose, adopting a timid, little white rabbit manner. "I'll take the smallest secondary bedroom, the one next to the master." Smack. I put all my strength into that slap, sending her crashing into the wall. A crystal earring flew out, bouncing on the polished floor with a sharp chime. The room fell utterly silent. I shook my numb wrist, pulled a disinfectant wipe from my handbag, and wiped each finger one by one. "First, the suite at Yunding is now registered in my name. I looked at Lucian, only has visitation rights, and only when I'm in a charitable mood. Second, I closed in on Nikki, who was covering her face and trembling, pinching her chin to force her to look at me. The second bedroom beside the master was designed by me for the dog. Her pupils contracted violently. Want to stay? I released her hand, took the fresh wineglass the waiter handed me at the right moment, and held it up to the light. First go take the canine behavior certification, learn not to run everywhere, not to wag your tail at somebody else's husband. I flung the wine at her feet, the deep red liquid splashed and stained her expensive shoes. Come ask me again then, whether your breed is fit to enter my door. With that, I stopped looking at any of them and turned away. 63 days after the divorce certificate took effect, my mother placed a dinner invitation on my desk. Saturday night, the Joes, she said as nonchalantly as if discussing the weekend menu. Their younger son Nathan came back to the country last month. You should go meet him. For the past 2 months Lucian has been like someone struck with a stubborn hysteria. First it was a diamond stud the size of a thumbnail, then the discontinued ballet music box I'd glimpsed in a magazine as a girl, and later even the very first fountain pen I ruined at 16, somehow he'd dug it out from a pile of old papers, put it in a velvet case and had it delivered to my office. I had my assistant send them back the same way, and a more expensive replacement would arrive the next day. Sometimes, when he annoyed me enough, I'd sign for them carelessly and turn around and donate them to the Women and Children's Foundation. Until the night of the Joe family dinner, when Vivian was fastening my dress belt and I looked at the mirror at the carefully made-up face with distant eyes and suddenly asked, Vivian, do you ever think I'm moving too fast? Her fingers paused and she glared at me from the mirror. Too fast? Elaine, have Lucian's junk gifts knocked some sense into you? He wasted 3 years of your youth, are you really going to let him waste the next 30? That scumbag, she tightened the belt hard, her voice was like steel quenched in fire, he isn't even fit to carry your shoes. That evening Nathan was slightly clearer looking than the photos in the dossier. We talked about blockchain's impact on traditional finance, about Nordic minimalist architecture, about the Siamese cat he kept in his Cambridge flat that was always stealing the neighbors' newspapers. He didn't pry into my past, didn't flatter me, he only, when I mentioned Lynn's new energy battery breakthrough in low-temperature performance, gently pushed up his glasses. That paper in Nature Energy last month was Ms. Elaine's team's work, wasn't it? The data modeling in Section 3 is very nice. In that moment I suddenly realized, I hadn't opened any of Lucian's messages for a full week. Even when he sent that outrageously expensive pure gold sailboat model this morning, I only glanced at the photo my assistant took and replied, handle it the usual way. After the dinner, when Nathan handed me my coat, he said, Sotheby's has a contemporary art private viewing early next month. I have an invitation. If Miss Elaine is interested. The preview was scheduled for Tuesday evening. When Nathan's driver came to pick me up, a fine mist of rain was falling. By the time we arrived, the gallery was already alive with low murmurs and the soft pop of champagne bubbles. Nathan was pointing at an early work by Zhao Wauqi and quietly discussing with me the Eastern sensibility in his brushstrokes when the phone in my purse vibrated against my thigh. It was Vivian. I nodded at Nathan and stepped into the secluded spot behind a column to answer. The voice on the other end wasn't her usual clear timbre but clipped and tightly wound with anger. Elaine, are you at Sotheby's? Yes, with Nathan. I noticed something off in her tone. What's happened? Lucian somehow got wind of it, she said. He found out about you and Nathan being set up. This afternoon he drove straight into the courtyard of the Zhou family's old house, smashed the glass of old Mr. Zhou's conservatory, trampled all those precious orchids inside to pieces, and in front of the Zhou elders he pushed over the agarwood screen at the entrance. He's like a mad dog right now, the Zhou family have already reported it to the police. I clenched the phone, the cold metal edge digging into my palm. Are Nathan's parents hurt? They're fine, but badly shaken. The key is, she paused, her voice dropping lower, when Lucian left the Zhou residence, his eyes weren't right. My people followed him for a while, his car was heading toward Central. I'm worried he traced the exact address and might come after you. Someone who's lost their mind can do anything. I looked up. Through the showroom's spotless floor-to-ceiling glass, I could see the rain-slicked arcade at the private entrance below. A figure was striding across the driveway in the downpour, heedless of the attendant's attempts to stop him, making straight for the VIP elevator. He wasn't holding an umbrella, his suit was splotched with darker and lighter patches from the rain, hair plastered disheveled against his forehead, yet his steps carried a reckless, bulldozing ferocity. It was Lucian. I watched the man hurry through the showroom toward me, soaked through, eyes wild, then added softly, finishing the sentence, "He's already here." At this moment Lucian looked absolutely dreadful. His eyes were rimmed with red, his hair plastered to his temple by the rain, there was not a trace left of the dignified air of the Liu family. "Do you need help?" Nathan stepped closer, his voice was steady, but his gaze appraised Lucian. "No need, Mr. Nathan, please continue." I turned to Lucian, my tone cold. "If there's something, let's go outside and talk." With that, I strode straight for the service corridor at the side door of the exhibition hall. It was quiet there, empty, suitable for dealing with such an unpleasant scene. Nathan nodded slightly and handed me a business card. "My bodyguard is waiting outside. Contact him anytime if you need." I took Lucian to a secluded VIP lounge on the ground floor of the Sotheby's building. When the door closed, it shut out the art and glitter beyond. He looked like a trapped animal finally letting go, slumping against the wall, his chest heaved as he stared at me. "Elaine." His voice was hoarse. "I need an explanation." Lucian's voice seemed squeezed out of an ice fissure, each word tempered with cold. I turned around and met his gaze across the dim light of the lounge. "It seems Mr. Lucian has already received the divorce papers." My tone was as calm as if I were reporting the day's weather. He took a step forward, his eyes churning with bewilderment and anger. "All because I didn't stay with you on our anniversary night?" "Elaine, this isn't the first time." "It certainly isn't the first time." I cut him off and even smiled faintly. "You have a good memory, Mr. Lucian." A look of disbelief flickered across his face, as if my calm was harder to fathom than hysteria. "You don't think," I stepped forward, forcing him back half a step, "that every time before, your shirt smelling of someone else's perfume, the footsteps coming home at dawn, those necessary social engagements, I really forgave you, do you?" My voice was quiet, yet his pupils contracted sharply. I raised my hand, my fingertip hovering over his chest, keeping a tally, line by line. "When the ledger is full, it's time to settle up and leave." His Adam's apple bobbed as if swallowing some sharp truth. "Why? You fell for Nathan? Just because he came with you to see some lousy paintings?" "Nathan?" I laughed softly. "Lucian, you've been around Nikki so long you've even picked up her petty tantrums." I picked up my clutch and walked to the door. But he grabbed my wrist, his grip so hard it hurt. "Elaine." His voice was hoarse, like a cornered animal's last struggle. "What do you actually want? The house? The shares?" "I sent Nikki away, there won't be another. We can start over." "Lucian." I cut him off, prying his fingers apart one by one. "What I wanted was never what you gave me." I placed the used wet wipe gently into his stiff palm. "It was you, along with your cheap guilt and charity, erased, completely, from my world." I picked up my clutch and headed for the door, but he grabbed my wrist from behind with a vice-like grip. His fingers were icy, trembling faintly. "I only made a mistake that any man in the world would make." His voice was ravaged, each word ground out of a parched throat. "I already agreed to send Nikki away, never to see her again." "Elaine, what more do you want me to do?" I stopped walking and didn't look back. "Or," he snapped, spinning me around, his reddened eyes locked on mine, "were you already two-timing with Nathan? Had you already found someone else and just used this as an excuse to divorce me?" I looked at the anger, the grievance, and a flicker of fear even he hadn't noticed rising in his eyes, and suddenly it all felt absurd. "Lucian," I gently withdrew my hand, took a disinfectant spray from my bag, and sprayed it onto the wrist he'd touched. How many years have we known each other? He froze. 12 years, I answered for him, from the hot dumplings you climbed the wall to bring me when you were 15, to the same man at 27 on our anniversary holding another woman and watching the sea of clouds. I put the spray away and looked up at him. In these 12 years, there were countless chances for you not to make mistakes. You could have skipped the concert with Nikki on my birthday, you could have declined that solo business trip to Paris on our anniversary, you could have avoided going to karaoke with another woman late at night while I was hospitalized after the car accident. His face went pale inch by inch. But you always chose the wrong path. I stepped forward, fixing my gaze on his fluttering eyes. And now you tell me this was just a mistake any man in the world would make? I smiled, a smile without warmth. Lucian, do you know when I decided to divorce you? It wasn't because you missed an anniversary, and it wasn't because of those photos Nikki sent of her wearing your shirt. It was the next night. I was lying in the emergency room covered in blood, and when the 13th call I made to you finally went through. In the background, Nikki was singing, "Today You're Going to Marry Me," and you said to me, "Is it serious? I'll have my assistant handle it." Elaine. I really didn't know you were so badly hurt. His voice trembled, each word seemed to roll over a blade. If I had known, how could I possibly? You really didn't know. I cut him off gently and shook my head, because when the ambulance brought me to the hospital, you were in the middle of singing the chorus of Hiroshima Mon Amour with Nikki. It's strange, isn't it? I looked out the window, the corner of my mouth forming a curve without warmth. I didn't cry when the cars collided, I didn't cry when I had to go through the checks alone, and even when the doctor told me there might be lasting damage, I still didn't cry. But when I was lying in the ER and heard you, on the other end of the phone, say, "Is it serious?" so offhandedly, I suddenly felt. I turned my head and met his pained gaze. It hurt more than a broken bone. At that moment I was thinking, my voice was very soft, as if speaking to myself, when I was 17 and broke my leg skiing, you carried me for 3 kilometers through the snowy mountain. By the time we reached the hospital your boots were full of ice, and you still smiled at me and said, "Elaine, don't be afraid." You said then, that whenever I needed you, you'd come running from the ends of the earth. I paused, glanced at my left leg, the pale scar flickered under the light like a faint memory. These past 2 years I'd been re-examining myself. Every time you didn't come home until dawn, every time there was a stranger's perfume on your shirt, every time you happened to be on a business trip on our anniversaries. I would wonder if I was being too petty, if that world really was just like that, if I should learn to be more generous. But when I lay in the hospital for 3 days, everything suddenly became clear. It wasn't the fault of that world, it wasn't Nikki's fault, and it wasn't even the fault of that car crash. It was the boy who once would have walked through snow for me who died long ago in the years. And now you, when my life hung in the balance, you even thought taking a single phone call from me would disturb your delicate mood. Lucian opened his mouth, but no sound came out. So, on the day of your accident, you had already decided to divorce me? Yes, I said calmly, looking back at him. In those few minutes after the anesthesia started to take effect, before I had completely lost consciousness. No. I didn't realize it was that serious. I thought it was just a little scrape. None of that matters anymore. We're divorced anyway. Tears slid from the corner of his eye with no warning. I won't, his voice broke. Elaine, we won't get divorced. Are you sure? I took the ultrasound printout from my bag and pushed it toward him. Nikki's pregnant. 8 weeks. I watched his face go suddenly ashen, my voice as soft as a sigh. See? Without me, your life can still be whole. Go back, Lucian. We are no longer on the same path. Lucian did not speak again. The corridor's light splintered his silhouette into fragments. Maybe it was the night of our wedding anniversary when I waited alone until dawn while he took Nikki to watch the sea of clouds on a private jet. Maybe it was when I had a high fever of 39 degrees Celsius and went to the hospital alone for an 4, and he was in the Peninsula suite, fastening onto Nikki the diamond necklace I had lingered over at the auction. Only then did he finally soberly realize, I'm really done with him. That car accident didn't take my legs, but it completely severed the last tie between us. He thought the one who could always control this marriage was himself. He thought no matter how he trampled my boundaries I would wait for him in the same place. He thought the title Mrs. Liu was the most secure shackle. But in this moment he finally understood, the one who couldn't live without me was him, Lucian. I was the spine that held up his world. The spine was pulled out, and his world collapsed, never to be pieced back into its original shape. And I had already walked away. I didn't even have the interest to look back at the ruins. A year later, Nikki vanished completely from show business. When Vivian tossed a gossip magazine in front of me, the cover headline was shocking, "Career Ruined. Nikki exposed for chaotic private life, donation scams, fake degrees, totally blacklisted." Lucian made the move. Vivian sipped her coffee. I heard Nikki was found to be pregnant 3 months ago and started demanding a promotion. The Liu family just handed her a plane ticket to the US and a payoff to keep quiet. I flipped through the inner pages. The Nikki in the photographs looked haggard and drained, not at all like the one who once swaggered around in my old dress. She didn't ask for money, she ran into the Liu Corporation building and made a scene, Vivian said in a low voice. They say she had a miscarriage on the spot, blood staining the marble floor. Lucian had the security drag her out and never came downstairs to look once. The Weekly wrote that after the operation Nikki had a mental breakdown and went on a rampage on social media, making wild accusations, only to be countersued for defamation due to lack of evidence. The brands she represented all dropped her, the series she starred in were recast and res hot, and even the Film Academy issued a statement revoking her outstanding graduate title. Completely, cleanly erased, as if she had never existed. Lucian has been in a real mess lately. Vivian flipped to the business section. The headline was even bolder, the Liu Group plunges into debt crisis, Zhou and Lin families withdraw all investments. Last time he went berserk and stormed into the Zhou household, Nathan immediately swooped in and bought 3 of Liu's core supply chains. Your brother went further, he pulled the entire tech team from the South City project, that was Liu's only profit this year. She chuckled lightly. Now everyone in the industry says the Liu family is one court document away from bankruptcy. I closed the magazine and looked out the window. Jiangqing's sky was still blue, the clouds still white. Perhaps Lucian thought he had only lost a marriage. He didn't realize, that moment he chose to cheat, he had already pressed the countdown to his family's collapse with his own hands. The Zhou family's revenge, the Lin family's cut off, were nothing more than a gentle breath blown against the already hollowed-out building. After all, in this marketplace of fame and fortune, those who betray their trust will ultimately end up with nothing.